Welcome to Year of Connection, a year-long journey toward becoming whole self-connected. I'm your host, Pauline Shu. I can't believe we're nearly halfway through February. Though a month with only a couple fewer days than others, it always feels weeks shorter to me. It's a month that seems busier, more amped up. And because of that, I often find myself in this month in particular working extra hard at slowing down. That sounds a little funny, but February for me is often about working hard to keep my mind centered and focused so that it doesn't get scattered in a million different directions. I work hard to stay connected. And one way I do that is through disconnecting, which is what we'll be discussing in today's episode. When my children were very small, we would often go to the park near our house to play. They would run up and down the structure too fast, swing too high, and generally strike terror into my heart as I tried to keep up with their tiny careening bodies. They almost always eluded me, of course, just out of reach, and yet somehow those moments stand out as being so deeply connected, so full of connection between me and my children. One afternoon, as we walked toward the park, I saw that there was a man there with his daughter. The little girl was sitting on the swing and he was pushing slowly, somewhat aimlessly with one hand, while he scrolled and swiped and tapped on his phone with the other. She kept asking him to swing her higher, and after several requests, he would look up from his phone, push her harder a few times until she was swinging high enough to satisfy her wishes. Then he would get distracted again, keeping one hand out to half-heartedly push, and the other to scroll and swipe and tap on his phone. Now, I don't know the circumstances around that particular incident. There might have been an emergency that he had to respond to, and sometimes that happens and requires us to be engaged with our phones or computers or other devices rather than with people. But all too often, that's not the case. And the scene at the playground, regardless of the motivation behind it, represents a problem that we often have when there isn't a reason to be on our devices other than want. And in some cases, addiction. We are a plugged-in society. Electronic devices have brought us a lot of wonderful things. 95% of Americans own a cell phone, 75% own a smartphone. Being able to reach one another or look something up or stay on top of the news anytime from anywhere has made life easier in many ways. But it has also taken us past convenient into an area that can be problematic for connection. I see it all the time when I'm waiting in line somewhere. No matter what the line is for, I find when people are gathered in such a way, instead of talking to strangers before and after them in the queue, they're standing, silent and transfixed on their smartphones. And I can't help but think of the song Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles. The refrain, "Ah, look at all the lonely people," goes through my head. This week, we'll be focusing on disconnecting, meaning from screens, from technology, from anything that doesn't have a human face, in order to slow down and be able to spend time to better connect on a personal, human level with others. I'm not saying we should get rid of our devices altogether. That would be silly. They're a part of our culture and we need them to maintain the society we've created. However, what I am hoping we can achieve is a better balance between the use of devices and the face-to-face connection that makes us better humans. But don't worry, we'll start with a small suggestion, even though it's one that might be difficult for the more device-dependent. The suggestion is this. Choose one day where, during time that you're awake, don't use your phone, your laptop, your television, your gaming console, any electronic device for 8 consecutive hours. 8 hours is a work shift, and for some of us, accomplishing this is probably going to be just that, hard work. But I encourage you not only to do this, but also to learn from it. Before, during, and after these 8 hours, think about how you feel. Write down what being plugged in adds to your life and what it takes away. Assess your interactions with your core connections as well as with yourself when you use your devices as opposed to when you don't. To help guide you, I've provided a set of questions in the show notes for this episode. ones that tie in specifically to your core values, your core connections, and your standards, over on my blog at yearofconnection.com. As for what you do with the unplugged time, that's up to you. As long as you put away the phone, iPad, TV, or anything else that links you electronically. It doesn't matter if you sit alone at home, or take a walk, or go to a cafe and sit. Simply go without being tethered to anything but the moment you're in. Something important to remember is that you might not see immediate results. You can think of unplugging as a little bit like an exercise plan. Results could take up to 6 weeks to appear, and individual results may vary. I'm only half kidding. It hopefully won't even take quite that long, and in fact, you will likely have some changes after that 8-hour stretch of time without a phone or a television. You might not notice them right away, though. So to that end, try to keep up this deviceless shift once a week for several weeks before you make a decision on how it affects your life. You might find, after a month of unplugged weekly shifts, going back to more screen time isn't quite as appealing as meeting a friend for coffee, reading a book, or pushing your child on a swing. If you do find that going through this process of unplugging is manageable enough that you'd like to do more, take a bit to analyze how you spend unnecessary screen time. For example, I would say that responding to emails during work hours is necessary, but responding after work hours is not. It depends on your type of job, of course, but in many cases what feels critical isn't really, and often an email can wait until the next business day. Or perhaps you love to watch TV after work or on the weekends to unwind. Ask yourself, how much TV do you really need to relax and how much is just extra, possibly even a bad habit? Do you think you can give up after-hours email replying completely or TV watching completely? What about for a month, for at least a week? Start with your least necessary device time and work on cutting that out 100%. If you need help in breaking this down so it's manageable, I recommend reading Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit. I used much of his advice to change my own behavior and found that it worked in the long term, rather than being a quick fix approach without much longevity. What each of these steps you take toward greater balance in the use of technology should yield is a deeper sense of connection. Over time, you should feel more present and more aware of the behaviors, emotions, and desires of others and of yourself. Without the pull on your attention by devices or electronic media, you are better positioned to engage in the world with your whole self. Seeing as stronger whole self connection is the goal of this year, I can't imagine a better way to move toward that goal. And again, it might not be easy. For many of us, this is a lifestyle change we're talking about and therefore not something that can be accomplished in a single afternoon. If you have a story or a question about unplugging that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. You can leave a comment on this show's post or email me. And if you've enjoyed listening to this episode or any other Year of Connection episodes, consider leaving a rating or review on iTunes or other app you're listening on. Reviews help other listeners to find the content that's right for them, and I certainly appreciate them. I'll see you next week. In the meantime, I wish you safe travels.